Good evening and welcome to today's meeting of the Commonwealth Club of California, the place where you're in the know. Find the club online at commonwealthclub.org, on Facebook and Twitter, and check out videos on the club's YouTube channel. I'm Mary Roach, journalist and author and your moderator for the program. And now it's my pleasure to introduce today's distinguished speaker, Andrew Fracknoy, chair of the Astronomy Department at Foothill College, former executive director of the Astronomical Society of the Pacific, and author of the children's book about eclipses, When the Sun Goes Dark. On Monday, August 21st, an eclipse of the sun will be visible throughout the US and all of North America. People in a narrow path from Oregon to South Carolina will see a spectacular total eclipse, the first in the continental US in 38 years. The moon will briefly cover the sun completely, and day will turn into night. Everyone else, an estimated 500 million people, including those in the Bay Area, will see a partial eclipse where the moon covers a good portion of the sun. Today, astronomer Andrew Fracknoy will describe how eclipses work, why they are one of nature's most spectacular sights, and exactly when and where the eclipse of 2017 will be visible, and how to observe the eclipse safely. Mr. Fracknoy will also cover historic discoveries made during eclipses, as well as citizen science projects planned for the upcoming eclipse. Mr. Fracknoy serves on the 2017 Eclipse Task Force of the American Astronomical Society and has been training teachers and librarians to act as guides for the public as the August eclipse approaches. Andrew Fracknoy appears regularly on local and national radio, explaining astronomical developments in everyday language, and was named California Professor of the Year in 2007. His first two science fiction stories were published in anthologies during the past year. The International Astronomical Union has seen fit to name asteroid number 4859 Asteroid Fracknoy. To honor his contributions to the public understanding of science. Following his retirement from Foothill College this summer, Mr. Fracknoy will be teaching non-credit courses for adults at San Francisco State and the University of San Francisco. Please welcome Dr. Andrew Fracknoy.
Well, first, thank you so much for that kind introduction. And the first thing I have to say is that asteroid Fracknoy is an extremely boring asteroid. It sits in the main asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter and is no threat to the Earth. That's very important to get out of the way. But thank you all for being here, those of you in the room at the Commonwealth Club and those of you watching this on the web. My job is a delightful one today to tell you about what we think really will be one of the great sky events of our lifetime, an eclipse of the sun that's total in one country and one country only, and that's the United States. That's why we're already calling it the All-American eclipse. And I'm sure the administration in Washington is going to take full credit for it the minute they wake up to the fact that it's happening. But it is remarkable that it's an American eclipse. It's so rare that we get one over the United States. Here's what happens during eclipses, and this is part of the great cosmic coincidence that not many people know about. It turns out that it just so happens that as seen from Earth, the sun in the sky and the moon in the sky are the same size. By the way, that's not true from any other planet-moon combination in the solar system. If you don't believe me, let me show you this. This is one of the moons of Mars trying to eclipse the sun and failing pathetically. Can you see how bad Phobos is at eclipsing the sun? So our moon just happens to be the right size that it can get in front of the sun and cover it up. And that's called a total eclipse. Here's the geometry of what's happening. You see that the moon gets completely, fully in front of the sun and makes a sharp shadow spot on the surface of our planet. And if you are in that shadow spot, then you will see the sun go out in the middle of the day. It's really awesome and spectacular. Now, the nice thing about the shadow spot is that the Earth turns. That's what it does for a living, right? It turns. And the moon moves in its orbit. It goes around us once every moon. Yeah, you guys say month, but it's really moon. And so as a result of these two motions, the shadow spot moves across the face of the Earth as the eclipse is happening. And this time, that shadow spot will only be about 60 to 70 miles across, but it will move across the United States. Here is a picture of a previous eclipse as glimpsed from space, and you can see that that shadow spot is real, that we really do get them on the Earth when the alignment is just right. So here is a beautiful sequence of pictures by my colleague Rick Feinberg, which shows the moon slowly moving across the face of the sun, and then suddenly the moon covers the sun completely, the sky becomes dark, and the faint halo around the sun becomes visible. This is the atmosphere of the sun, which is much too faint to be seen when the sun is out, but becomes spectacular when the sun is eclipsed. And our eclipse in this case will last a relatively short time. It's only a 2.5-minute eclipse in most places, so you have to make sure you're paying attention when it's happening. And then the moon moves away, the moon moves off the sun, and eventually the sun is returned to its former glory. That's what happens during an eclipse, a total eclipse of the sun. Just at the last minute, when the moon is about to hide the sun, we see the last glimpse of the sun through a valley on the moon, and that's often called the diamond ring effect, because you can already see the ring of the sun's atmosphere, and then there's that last glimpse of the sun itself through a valley, and it looks like a diamond engagement. After that, the sky goes dark, the atmosphere of the sun comes out, and in that atmosphere, a lot happens. That's where the sun's activity is most easily glimpsed. Great tongues of hot material move away from the sun, and so during an eclipse, we can not just notice the atmosphere of the sun, but study the things that are going on, the processes that keep it warm and provide what we call space weather for the solar system. Now, here's what's the geographical situation for the August 21 eclipse. The eclipse begins, the shadow spot first hits in the Pacific Ocean. It then hits land on a beach in central Oregon, moves diagonally across the country, and leaves the United States on a beach in South Carolina, moving into the Atlantic Ocean. If you are somewhere in that dark zone, that's where you will see the eclipse total. Everywhere else in the country, we will see a substantial and impressive partial eclipse, which I'll talk about in just a second. Here are the states which are going to experience the eclipse this time around, but not every part of each state. Only a small 60 to 70 mile wide zone in each of these states gets to see the eclipse. And just to make things interesting, this is mostly a rural eclipse. The eclipse does not go through one of the biggest metropolitan areas in the country. There are some cities that can see it. A tiny corner of St. Louis will see the eclipses total. Nashville, Tennessee will see the eclipses total and make a lot of music in the process. But for the most part, it will be small towns, farms, forests, state and national parks, which will be where the shadow spot hits the United States. So my feeling is that Airbnb is going to clean up on this eclipse, because there aren't a lot of hotels, but there are more private residences, which have, I think, long ago been rented. Just to give you an example, here is a map by cartographer Michael Zeiler from the Great American Eclipse website, where he has charted the map of each state very carefully and shown exactly where the total eclipse will be visible. This is Oregon, and you can see that the eclipse studiously avoids Portland, which is the big city in Oregon, and doesn't get to be over Eugene, where the University of Oregon is, disappointing the Ducks, and only is over the central part of Oregon. So you have to be in that 60 to 70 mile wide path to see the eclipse. And many people have for years been planning to go to those zones in Oregon from California and around the world. Here is some information about the cities where the eclipse will be total. And by the way, these slides will go by pretty quickly, but I want to mention for those of you in the room, you don't have to write anything down. A lot of the information is on that pink handout that you either got or will pick up on your way out. And for those of you listening on the web, in a little while I will recommend a free booklet that everyone can download from the web, where all these charts and the diagrams I'm showing are freely available. So you can take these home and you can show them to friends and relatives on the web. But here are the cities where the eclipse is total: Salem, Oregon, Casper, Wyoming, and Carbondale, Illinois. Now, metropolitan Carbondale is just beside itself over the fact that they are the center of this eclipse. It's quite long, actually, as this eclipse goes in Carbondale. Another factor that's going to be a major issue for eclipse gazers is the weather. It's no good having an eclipse if you can't see the sun. If it's completely cloudy, as it often is on an August day in the United States, or like here in San Francisco, if it's completely foggy, then you will miss the eclipse. So this is the hero of our story. Jay Anderson is a jovial Canadian meteorologist who keeps track of eclipse weather and has made predictions for each part of the United States about what the likelihood is of cloud cover in any particular region in the eclipse zone. And here is a graph that he produced. The gist here is that as you go from left to right on this graph, you go from the west coast to the east coast. As you go from bottom to top in this graph, you go from less cloud cover to more cloud cover. So that red line shows you the likelihood of cloud cover on August 21st based on many decades of August 21st weather. And you can see there's quite a difference. In some parts of Oregon and Idaho, the chances of clouds are less than 40%. In some parts near the East Coast, the chance of clouds approaches 80%. So choosing your location wisely is also an important part of eclipse planning. And pay attention to the weather as you make your plans. This is what we're afraid of. That if you have some group of people who have planned a year and a half in advance that they're going to be in one of these eclipse zones, and suddenly it's cloudy where they are, but sunny just a few miles down, they're all going to rush to their cars at the last minute and try to drive over to the sunny part, and it's going to be utter gridlock on the small roads in those areas. So pay attention to weather, pay attention to what everybody else around you is doing. We have calculated, again, Michael Zeiler has done a lot of work on this, that 12 million Americans live in the eclipse path, and there's plenty of room for them and plenty of room for hundreds of thousands of visitors from around the world. That's no problem. But here's the scary thing. 47 million Americans live within 100 miles of the total eclipse zone. And this is the United States, where on an August morning, it's not a big deal to say, honey, let's grab the kids, we'll get in the car, we'll drive 100 miles, and we'll see that darn total eclipse. And if, let's say, 10 million Americans decide the weekend before that they're going to do that on that Monday in August, it's going to be utter gridlock getting into the eclipse zone. So we are advising people, if you're going into the zone, it's a good idea to be there the day before. Don't leave it till the morning of the eclipse to travel. Many, many people may have that idea when they learn about the eclipse from the media that weekend before. This is the big issue. If 10 million new people descend into the eclipse zone, where are they all going to go? Right? All the porta potties in the zone are already spoken for. There's discussion with the emergency management teams about bringing more porta potties into those areas, which are not heavily occupied usually. And this is going to be a major problem, right? So not just where you go, but water and food. So again, if you're making last-minute plans to go to the eclipse, be sure you plan ahead, bring food and drink with you, make sure you get gas before you get into the eclipse zone, etc. It's as if you were going to Woodstock or some other enormous concert, right? You want to plan ahead and have the provisions with you. Again, this is a picture I just picked up off the web of gridlock, but that's our big concern, because many of the roads in this zone are not like this with 4 lanes allowing traffic. They are much smaller rural roads, not at all ready for millions of sun visitors. Well, that's the total eclipse, but most of the people in the United States will see a partial eclipse, where the moon and the sun are not exactly aligned, and only part of the sun is covered by the moon. Partial eclipses can also be spectacular, but they are dangerous to look at. Any time that the moon is not completely covering the sun, you should not stare at the sun. Now, most of us, most of the time, know this really well. It's very rare that anybody is foolish enough to stare at the sun for any length of time. It hurts. But sometimes during eclipses, astronomical enthusiasm can overwhelm common sense, right? And especially with kids. So it's really important that you have some way of observing the sun safely if the sun is not completely covered by the moon. Those of you here in the room at the Commonwealth Club have had the good taste to come today, and you will receive a free pair of safe eclipse viewing glasses. For those of you not in the room, I'll talk in a minute about how others can get these glasses. And that's probably the best way. There are relatively inexpensive paper-framed glasses which have the right kind of plastic material to cut out most of the harmful rays of the sun and the intensity of the sun, and to make the sun perfectly safe to look at for as long as you want. And that's what you should be using, if at all possible, during the eclipse. As you heard in the kind introduction, we think almost 500 million people in North America will see, or will be able to see, the partial eclipse. That's a lot of people. That's a lot of glasses, right? How are we going to get all these people glasses? This has been the big issue, and as you heard, I'm on the task force trying to figure this out, and that's what we look like most of the time. It would have been great if some national company had, let's say some company that had coffee stores in every community, had been interested in selling these glasses, but that didn't turn out to be the case, and we will need lots and lots of these eclipse glasses. So a group of us really thought hard about what we could do to get glasses to people. And here is a picture showing that we're not the first group to be worrying about this. This is a newspaper headline from 1918, the last time that an eclipse crossed the United States. And notice the headline: thousands point glasses at the sun. You want just take that headline, cross out thousands, and write millions, and you're in good shape. So what were we going to do? By the way, here is the eclipse for the biggest cities in the United States. Again, this is a complicated slide. Pay attention to the first column and the last column. That tells you the city and how much of the sun will be covered on August 21st. For example, New York City will see 71% of the sun covered, quite substantial. Los Angeles, being further south, will see 62% covered. Here in the San Francisco Bay Area, 76% of the sun will be covered, quite impressive. And the cover-up in Washington, D.C. will be 81%, which is pretty typical of the cover-up in Washington. So here again is the situation for the San Francisco Bay Area, where the Commonwealth Club is located. For us, the partial eclipse begins at 9 a.m. It reaches its maximum with 3/4 of the sun covered at 10:15 a.m. and it's all over by 11:30. So these numbers, which by the way are similar but different times for different cities, should make you think a little bit about what you do if you are just going to see the partial eclipse. Seeing the partial eclipse is like going to the beach. You're going to be standing in the sun. And I can't emphasize enough that if you are going to be standing in the sun for some substantial period of time, do the things you do when you go to the beach. Make sure you have a hat to protect yourself. Make sure you have sunblock to put on you and the kids. Make sure you have drinks with you so you stay hydrated. All the common sense things that you think about when you're going to be in the sun for a while, please think about if you're going to go out and look at the partial eclipse. The best time in the California area to look will be from about 10 to 10:30. So even if you're in a big building or wherever you are with colleagues, lure everyone outside and make sure they take a look in a safe way at the eclipse, at least between 10 and 10:30 a.m. on August 21st. As I say, August 21st is the date. It's a Monday. Informal surveys show that about half the schools in the U.S. will be in session, and about half the schools won't. Now, that means half the kids will be with their parents, and you'll be responsible for their eclipse experience. We'll talk more about that in a second. But for those kids going to school, August 21st is often the first day of school. It will be here. The San Francisco Unified School District starts school on August 21st. So the teachers won't even know the kids won't know the teacher, but guess what's happening the first period? An eclipse! Oh my goodness. So that's why we've been training teachers for a year and a half, doing webinars and producing materials. But if you know that your child is going to be going to school that day and you're not sure if the teacher's prepared, maybe share some of the information that you learned in this talk with your child's teacher in advance. They will appreciate it. The number one way, as I say, to get safe views of the partially eclipsed sun is through these inexpensive but certified eclipse glasses. 2 companies make them in the United States in bulk: American Paper Optics and Rainbow Symphony. Both of them make most of their money from 3D glasses for the movies, but whenever there's an eclipse, they gear up for producing these eclipse glasses. And you can buy them in bulk for the PTA or your group, but if you're going to buy them soon, because the eclipse is coming, and they're going to get overwhelmed probably with eclipse orders toward the very end. American Paper Optics and Rainbow Symphony are the 2 companies. But we thought to ourselves, how can we get eclipses to the public, particularly people who are not privy to Commonwealth Club talks? And we had this epiphany a year ago: public libraries. Public libraries are in the information distribution business. If we could get these glasses to public libraries, they're a terrific way to get them out to the public. And thank goodness we got a foundation interested. The Gordon and Betty Moore Foundation right here in the San Francisco Bay Area became interested in the project and then decided that they would fund 1.2 million eclipse glasses. Google, with whom we're working, then also decided to step up. And so we now have 2 million eclipse glasses that have been distributed free of charge to public libraries nationwide. And we're really delighted. Thank you, Gordon and Betty Moore Foundation and Google, for doing this. And this is a slightly outdated map of what libraries are doing it across the country. We already have about 5,000 libraries, and now NASA's putting in even more glasses. So we hope to be up to 6,900 libraries before the project is over. So if you're listening to this talk on the web, the first place to go to see if you can get eclipse glasses is your local public library. Tell them I sent you. No, please don't. They're going to be overwhelmed with requests. We're getting a lot of help from unexpected sources. The United States Postal Service has issued the first ever thermochromic ink stamp for the eclipse. And you all know what thermochromic means, right? I had no idea. I had to look it up. Thermochromic means if you touch the stamp, the heat of your finger will change the picture. So the picture on the left will turn into the picture on the right. Really cool. Or hot, depending on your point of view. Really an amazing that many post offices are already sold out, but the U.S. Postal Service website lets you order it. I don't make any money from this, I'm just telling you. USPS.gov, you can still order the stamp, and it's a wonderful souvenir of the eclipse. Now, what if you can't get glasses and you still want to see the eclipse? There are ways of projecting an image of the eclipsed sun which make it perfectly safe. This is something more for people with good equipment. If you have a tripod and binoculars, you can block off one half of the binoculars, and then have a screen around the binoculars so that a shadow can be seen on a piece of paper on the other end of the binoculars, and you can project an image. But this is not for most people. For most people, here's a simple way to get a projected and safe image. Take a hand mirror or a woman's compact mirror, cover it with cardboard, leaving only a hole about the size of a dime. And then use that mirror to catch an image of the sun and project it onto a wall. Here's a diagram showing how you might do that. Now, let me tell you, don't do this for the first time August 21st. It takes some practice. Right? So go out on August 20th, scout your location for the next day, practice with the mirror until you can catch an image and then project it onto a wall. But once you get good at this, you will be the hero of your neighborhood. If you are able to project a safe image some distance away, it'll be pretty big and everybody can go look at it safely. So that's a terrific thing to practice. A covered mirror making an image on a wall. The simplest thing is to make a pinhole viewer, to have a piece of cardboard with a tiny hole in it and another piece of paper and project a tiny pinhole image. But if you're thinking of this, I wouldn't do it this way. Use a colander. You know about your colander, right? You have at home this thing that you use to wash vegetables and fruit in, and it's a bunch of holes in a metal or plastic container. Just bring that outside with you. Hold the colander over your shoulder with your back to the sun, and the shadow of the colander on the pavement, which is what I show you here, will have many, many pinhole images of the eclipse sun. It's so cool to have that at your disposal. And then when you're done, the colander is a fashion accessory. Protect yourself from the sun. So as you heard, we've been working with teachers. The National Science Teachers Association has been very involved from the beginning about trying to get teachers up to speed on the eclipse. My colleague Dennis Schatz and I have written a book for teachers called Solar Science, full of activities that they can do in the classroom. But I mentioned this not as a plug, but to remind myself that as part of that book, we wrote an 8-page, non-technical, everyday language booklet all about the eclipse with all the information that I've had in this lecture. And the National Science Teachers Association has very kindly agreed and has put this booklet free on the web for anyone to use and forward and send on to friends and relatives and colleagues. So here's where you go to get that free booklet, just nsta.org/solar science. Those of you here in the audience, you have this on your pink sheet, so you don't need to write this down. But for everybody else, nsta.org/solar science, one word, is the page which will then get you directly to a link to go to a PDF file, which is this 8-page non-technical booklet, and we encourage you to share that with friends and relatives around the country. By the way, if you have relatives in the eclipse zone, the total zone, now's the time to remind them how much you miss them. Now, we have, as you heard, also written a children's book, Dennis Schatz and I, called When the Sun Goes Dark. In this children's book, we tell the story of two grandparents who are eclipse chasers. That's their hobby. They go wherever eclipses are visible, and they are coming home and telling their grandkids all about this. And in the process, we outline in the book some fun activities that you can do in your own home with kids, with everyday materials, to help them understand what's going on. Simple activities: just get a light bulb, a tennis ball, and a kid's head. And you can make your own eclipse in your darkened living room. So that's all outlined in the book, and those of you here in the room will have the books after the talk. Let me go back one. Now, many people are doing interesting citizen science projects. One of my favorites is the Eclipse Mega Movie Project, in which the University of California at Berkeley and Google are joining forces to ask serious photographers who are within the eclipse spot, anywhere in the United States, and probably taking pictures of the beautiful eclipse sun with the halo of light around it. Please take those pictures and send them wirelessly to Google after the eclipse is over. And there's a whole Google team devoted to taking all the pictures from every spot in the United States, stitching them together in order, the same size, to make a movie. It takes 1 hour and 37 minutes for the eclipse spot to go from the West Coast to the East Coast. That's a lot faster than United. 1 hour and 37 minutes to cross the country. But for that 1 hour and 37 minutes, we in the US will have access to the atmosphere of the sun. And all these pictures, when they're stitched together, should make a pretty cool movie of the sun. So that's the Eclipse Mega Movie Project. If you're interested in being one of the photographers, I think they're still taking a few more reservations. And they hope to have a 3-minute version of the movie ready the night of the eclipse. We'll see if they do it. Google is very excited about the technical challenges here. Another interesting citizen science project is called Life Responds. It's being driven from the California Academy of Sciences right here in San Francisco. And this is an attempt to get information about what animals do during the eclipse. We have lots of anecdotes about animals being pretty confused when the total eclipse happens. Here it is, night in the middle of the day. Their stomachs are saying it's not time for the evening, but their eyes are saying it is. And there are all kinds of anecdotal reports about animals acting confused and going to places where they don't normally go. But now, using a phone app, the California Academy would like to have data to convert anecdotes to a stream of data and have lots of information from across the country about what animals do. That's called Life Response. NASA is very involved with the eclipse. Many NASA telescopes and space probes will be looking back at the Earth, some of them, or looking at the sun in their own way. NASA has its own eclipse website, eclipse2017.nasa.gov, full of great information. The American Astronomical Society, where I'm on the task force for the eclipse, has its own website as well called eclipse.aas.org. And if you're a serious photographer, or if you want to make video of the eclipse, then this is the place to go. There's a whole section on the eclipse.aas.org website with great information about how to do photography during the partial phase, the total phase, how to do videos, etc. But, can I say something to the beginners in the audience? If this is your first eclipse, folks, put the equipment away. This is going to be a relatively short eclipse as eclipses go. Even in the best of places, only 2.5 minutes, less in other places. Don't waste that time fiddling with equipment you're not familiar with. Just experience the eclipse. Experience day turning into night suddenly. Experience the idea that where you are, it's dark, but if you can see the horizon, it's the light on your horizon. Look at the fact that stars come out during the total eclipse. Watch the magnificent halo of the sun's atmosphere. People say it's a once-in-a-lifetime experience. Just experience it. There are plenty of photographers taking pictures who are, no offense, better than you. And you should just experience the eclipse. Why don't we have an eclipse all the time? Why is this such a big deal? Here's a quick introduction to that science. The moon orbits the Earth at a slightly inclined angle. The plane, the orbit of the moon, is tilted relative to the orbit of the Earth around the sun and the orbit that most of the planets have around the sun. And this tilt means that most of the time, when the moon in its monthly orbit around the Earth, when the moon is in the neighborhood of the sun, most of the time the moon is either above the sun or below the sun, because the orbit is tilted. Here's a diagram with hula hoops showing the same idea. The moon's orbit is often below or above the sun, and during those times we don't get any eclipse. But twice in the course of a year, the two orbits cross, just like the hula hoops cross in the little girl's hand here. And when the orbits cross, then it's eclipse season. And it's possible to have eclipses somewhere on Earth. Now, it's not always a total eclipse. Sometimes the moon's a little too far away and you still get a ring of the sun showing. Sometimes it's only a partial eclipse everywhere on Earth. Or even if it's a total eclipse, it's often happening where nobody lives. 2/3 of the Earth's surface is water. So you're likely to get eclipses where nobody lives except fish, right? And rich people can take their yacht in there, but for the rest of us, this is not an eclipse we're going to see. Whereas this eclipse is wonderfully democratic. Everyone in North America gets to see it free of charge. All right. In the past, eclipses were scary. Imagine if you had no idea before they could predict these eclipses, as we can now, hundreds of years in advance. Before they could predict them, imagine how people felt when all of a sudden, unexpectedly, the sun was going away. Something was covering up the sun. The legends all had things like monsters or dragons eating the sun, and it must have been pretty scary. Now, this is where the tradition arose. What do you do if a monster is eating the sun? Well, you frighten the monster. So in many cultures, what you do during an eclipse is you bring out pots and pans, and you bang them together as loud as possible to frighten the dragon away. And you know what? It always worked. That's right. It always worked. And the sun soon was restored. Now, on a more serious note, today, what science do we do with the eclipses? Well, I mentioned the atmosphere of the sun. The atmosphere of the sun was actually discovered during eclipses. We didn't know about it until an eclipse made the bright part of the sun go away and showed us that there was a whole series of zones, very interesting zones, around the sun. We call this the atmosphere of the sun. The outermost atmosphere is called the corona, and it's highly variable, lots of magnetic energy, forcing hot particles away from the sun. So we study the atmosphere of the sun still during these eclipses, and there will be many astronomical telescopes that are in the business of pointing at the sun during the eclipse. But I did want to mention Einstein. This is Einstein laughing. And the reason he's laughing when I give a talk on eclipses is because Einstein actually became famous as a result of an eclipse. Einstein in 1916, more than 100 years ago, made a prediction for a theory of gravity, which was a really weird and wonderful idea. The idea that gravity could, in a sense, warp the very fabric of space and time. This is called the general theory of relativity. And the notion of warping space was an integral part of this theory. But Einstein calculated that the effect of gravity not acting like a force in this case, but acting like some kind of warp in the very geometry of space and time, this effect was negligible for the gravity of the Earth. And so it couldn't really be measured very well on Earth. He calculated that the only body in the solar system that had enough gravity to show this warping effect was the sun. And he realized that if we could see beams of starlight coming very close to the sun, they would be traveling through warped space, and the beams would seem to be out of place from their usual position. Well, there's a small technical problem seeing beams of starlight go very close to the sun. What's the problem? The sun's too bright, right? You can't see stars when the sun is out, it's daytime. But Einstein was no dummy. He took an astronomy class. He knew that during a total eclipse of the sun is completely covered, and the stars come out. So his prediction was, next eclipse, go to where the eclipse is total, photograph all the stars whose light is closest to the sun, and see if the stars are in the wrong place compared to where we normally have them in our star atlas. And the next eclipse was visible in 1919. Until 1918, we were too busy killing each other in World War I. But in 1919, an eclipse was visible off the coast of Africa. An international team of astronomers went there, photographed the eclipse, and the stars were out of place by just the amount Einstein had predicted. This is what made Einstein world famous. That's what made his name a household word. Before that, he was known to the nerds, but not to the general public. And you can see this is the headline in the New York Times, lights all askew in the heavens. How could you not get excited by that? Well, let me finish up by just saying a few words about the future. What happens if you have to miss this eclipse, or you have the bad luck to be where it's cloudy? Well, usually it's decades, centuries, before a country might see another eclipse. But this time, we lucked out. There will be another total eclipse crossing the United States in only 7 years. April 8th, 2024. Put this on your social calendar now. April 8th, 2024, there will be another total eclipse crossing the country, this time going completely diagonal in an X to the one today, and a different set of states will get to see a total eclipse in this country. April 8th, 2024, we get another one. So save your glasses for 7 years. They'll still be good. Well, I hope I've given you a lot to chew on in this talk. And let me finish up by wishing all of you here and all of you listening on the web good companions and clear skies on August 21. Thank you.
Chair of the Astronomy Department at Foothill College, former Executive Director of the Astronomical Society of the Pacific, and author of the children's book about eclipses, When the Sun Goes Dark. And now we have our question period, and we do have a number of questions for you. So let's begin. Okay. Well, this is a good one. How dark will it get in San Francisco?
Great question. So what happens during a partial eclipse? I put a lot of emphasis on the total eclipse. Well, what about a partial eclipse? And it's not much more than a cloudy day. Right? If the sun is covered, it could be covered by the moon in a spectacular sky show, or it could be covered by some boring clouds. And it's pretty much the same idea. So 1/4 of the sun will be showing here in the Bay Area at 10:15 a.m., August 21st. So it'll be like, if let's say by some miracle it's absolutely sunny and you're seeing it, then it'll turn into a cloudy day for a couple of minutes, and then it'll be gone. And you'll be back to the sun.
Let's see. What can you learn about the sun by observing the corona during an eclipse?
So the corona. This is a fascinating subject. And let me just say, without getting into too much technical detail, one of the amazing things about the corona, which is the outermost atmosphere of the sun, is that it's a lot hotter than either the lower atmosphere or the sun's surface. And that's not right. No, sun shouldn't behave like that. That's bad behavior. How can it be that the surface of the sun is cooler than this faint outer atmosphere? So we now know that there are incredibly strong magnetic forces within the sun. The sun is a strong magnet, and the magnetic force comes out at the surface, and it manages to do a very complicated series of things to the particles escaping from the sun, boiling off the sun. And those particles are often accelerated and made much hotter and more energetic by what happens in the corona. Every once in a while, we actually get a large lump of material, individual gas, so not lump like a solid, but gas particles, a big cloud, actually leaving the sun. That's called a coronal mass ejection. Most of those just go somewhere in the empty space of the solar system, but every once in a while we have bad luck. And that coronal mass ejection is launched directly toward planet Earth. And when that happens, we call that solar storms or solar weather. And it can be quite serious for the Earth. If it's a large amount of material, it can damage some of the delicate instruments aboard our satellites in orbit. And it can even begin to do things to the power grid down here on Earth. We've had a couple of these where the relatively delicate power grid that connects the cities and states, because of all this charged energy, charged particles coming from the sun and overloading the Earth's magnetic field and the Earth's atmosphere, descends, and we have to sort of pay attention to what's happening with the power grid. So we study the corona in part so we can have predictions of solar storms and a better understanding of the sun.
With the moon Slowly moving away from the Earth, will total solar eclipses cease to exist one day?
This is a very knowledgeable person in the audience. Good for you, whoever asked that question. So this is a deep, dark secret of astronomers. No, we talk about this in all my classes, but it's a deep, deep, dark secret that actually the moon's orbit is not stable. The moon and the Earth are exchanging energy very slowly over millions of years. And so the moon is actually very slowly moving away from the Earth. Which means in the past we had eclipses that were more than total and probably actually obliterated the atmosphere of the sun. And in the future, millions of years in the future, the moon will be so far away it will never cover the sun totally, and total eclipses will cease to happen. So let me congratulate all of you in the audience for your good taste in being born now, when this phenomenon is visible and can be enjoyed.
Okay, these are a couple practical matters. Are the plastic glasses any better than the less expensive paper glasses?
All right, so this is great. I'm really glad someone asked about this. So pay really careful attention to what glasses are okay and what glasses are not okay. Number one, sunglasses, no good. Even if they're polarized or you bought them in a fashion store, sunglasses are by no means sufficient. Okay? The only kind of regular glasses that will work are welder's glass. If you happen to have a welder in your family, number 14 or higher number welder's glass also works. But nothing else. Film, those of you who still remember photographic film, none of that works. So these glasses are just a series of plastic filters made certified to a standard that the eye doctors give us, which will protect your eyes. So make sure when you get glasses that on the back it says certified. But it doesn't matter what frames those pieces of plastic, whether it's paper or plastic or rhinestones or whatever you want to put around them, as long as you have certified eclipse glasses. In Texas, they're selling the glasses with a big hat. Anyway.
To photograph the eclipse with a 35mm camera or an iPhone, if you're wearing eclipse glasses, is that sufficient, or do you need something over the lens?
Yes, you should not photograph the eclipse unless you have something over the lens of your camera. And don't photograph the eclipse with your iPhone. I love iPhones, so you all have them, or the other kind. The brand doesn't matter. But the kind of cameras in your phone are not meant for taking a long focus picture like that, looking at something distant in the sky. You'll be very disappointed in that picture, and you will have wasted precious moments not looking at the sun. Don't do that. When the eclipse comes, take your glasses off, your eclipse glasses off, during the total eclipse, when no part of the sun is showing, then the eclipse is safe to look at, and just enjoy it. If you want really detailed information about that, again, go to the American Astronomical Society website, eclipse.aas.org, and they have lots of articles for every kind of camera on how to do photography, if you must.
I have a question. So while it's in totality, you can look at it with the naked eye, right. And as it begins to move off at the sun, how much time do you have before you can completely damage your
people worry about this.
eyes?
No, it's not that big a deal. When the moon first moves off the sun, your big hint that it's happening is that you'll see the diamond ring again. You'll see the halo of the sun, and then one valley of the moon, whichever one it happens to be, will let a little bit of sunlight through, and you'll see this diamond ring effect. That's your warning of probably time to get your glasses back on. But we're not talking about half a second or your eyes are ruined. I mean, this is a tiny bit of the sun. So in a calm, measured way, when you see the diamond ring, look away, find where your glasses are, put them back on, and enjoy the rest of the celestial program.
Before they invented these glasses, was there just a stream of people in emergency rooms with blinded and groping around? I mean, what was the scene like before the invention of these glasses?
The good news is that most people didn't know an eclipse was happening, and if it was a partial eclipse, it was over, and nobody knew it was there, because it just seemed like it was a cloudy day, and you were busy doing whatever you were doing. So not that many people looked at the sun. It was actually Galileo, we think, who first came up with the idea, and some people say it was one of his graduate students, not Galileo, but he came up with the idea of projecting an image of the sun through the primitive telescope, and that image was safe to look at, even though looking through the telescope would have hurt their eyes even more. So the projection of images has been around since the 60s.
Did Galileo come up with the colander thing?
Yeah, no, colander is a modern idea.
How are cities and towns preparing for the influx of people on August 21st?
Well,
No.
that's the question. So this is really an interesting problem. I mean, you can imagine these small towns in the total eclipse zone, for the most part, how thrilled they are to be on the map, to be getting all these visitors, to have every hotel room been essentially taken 6 months ago. The campgrounds are all, not all of them, but many are completely spoken for. Farmers are renting out their fields as makeshift campgrounds, etc. So for the most part, the towns think this is fabulous, and they are ordering extra provisions. They're setting up festivals. Many of the smaller towns in Oregon, for example, are going to have eclipse festivals. And they're renting out the town square so people can park there, and so on and so forth. So for the most part, people are doing a good job in planning ahead for those visitors they know about. But what no one knows is how many spontaneous visitors there will be who made no early provisions, let no one know they're coming, but descend on the 60 to 70 mile wide strip. And that's anyone's guess. Look, folks, this is the first US eclipse of the internet age. The good news is the internet is a wonderful source of information. The bad news is the internet is a great source of misinformation. So we don't know how the average US citizen is going to learn about this eclipse. Are they learning about it now like you guys are? Are they planning ahead? Will they make some provisions now that they know about it a month or so in advance? And how many people will really just learn about it when there's a big evening news story in their local town, and they'll just decide all of a sudden to go? My advice to people who are serious about this is don't leave anything till the last minute. Try to be in the zone and where you plan to be for the eclipse the day before. That would be the best advice we can give you. That's not always possible, but since the day before is a Sunday, it's not a crazy suggestion.
How have eclipses affected history over the years?
Oh my goodness, there are so many stories. I mean, this is the plot of the Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court. If those of you have read Mark Twain, this idea that someone would go back in time and know that an eclipse was coming and convince people that he was an absolute magician for predicting the eclipse. And there are stories told, for example, Columbus, we are mostly reliably told, not on his first journey to the New World, but on a subsequent journey, wound up on the way back, not having enough provisions, having very, very bad winds, so being stalled for a long time and running out of fresh water and fresh food, and having to make land on an island in the Caribbean. And then, by that time, all his trading little gewgaws that he had to trade with the people in the Americas were gone, and he needed to take on fresh provisions. And his crew had mutinied over all the difficulties in getting food and water, so there was not good relationship when they landed with the locals, and he was not able to trade to get provision to go back to Europe. And Columbus, the story is told, did what we all do when we get depressed. He read an astronomy book, and he learned in this book that there was an eclipse coming. I think this was an eclipse of the moon rather than the sun, which are more common. And he sent a message to the local leaders saying that his God was really mad at their God, and if they weren't providing what Columbus needed, there would be this terrible thing happening in the sky. And the story is told that when it happened, the chief then said, okay, let's trade with this guy. He knows what he's talking about. We don't know how much of that is true, but we astronomers tell this story gleefully in every astronomy class, saying how important it is to read astronomy books when you're in trouble.
Another practical question. If you're going to see the eclipse, you know someone who has a telescope, and you can purchase filters to put over that. Is that worth doing, or are you just seeing a bigger version of what you'd see through the glasses?
Oh, no. If you have someone with a telescope who knows what they're doing, and they have one of these safe filters large enough to put over the business end of the telescope, it's spectacular to see an enlarged eclipsed sun. You can see much more detail in the atmosphere. You might see what's called prominences, tongues of flame, tongues of hot material, not really flame, tongues of hot material coming out of the sun. It's beautiful if you have someone who knows what they're doing. But please only do that if you know what you're doing. If you're a beginner with a telescope, just put it away and enjoy the total eclipse or the partial eclipse as best you can.
Do other planets experience eclipses?
Yeah, so someone actually did the calculation looking at if you could stand on Mars or Venus. Venus is perpetually cloudy, so it's like being in San Francisco all the time. You never get to see the stars. But if you could stand on any of these planets, and then you could see one of their moons in the sky. Venus doesn't have any moons, but Mars has 2 to make up for it. If you could stand on the surface and look at any moon, would that moon fully eclipse, exactly eclipse the sun from that planet? And for all the moons that are round, which are the same shape as the sun, the answer is no. No other moon has an exact match between the size of the moon and the size of the sun in that planet's sky. Now, some people are saying some of the moons that look like diseased potatoes, the ones that are captured asteroids, some of them might sort of cover the sun, but then some part of the sun is showing because the moon is not completely round. So for all practical purposes, if you're a tourist, this is the planet to come.
What is an astronomical event that you would love to witness but have not yet?
Well, that's great. One event that I would love to witness but do not actually want to see is a large asteroid heading toward the Earth. That would be very interesting astronomically speaking, but politically we don't need a lot of water. That's why I say asteroid factor is not in danger of doing that. But we do know now that there are many asteroids that cross the Earth's orbit. Most of them have the decency to cross the Earth's orbit when the Earth is not in that part of the orbit and it misses us. But every once in a while it can happen that a small chunk of rock in space will arrive at the Earth's orbit at the same time that the Earth is there. And then we get an asteroid that hits the Earth. Many of them burn up in the Earth's atmosphere. They're so small and the atmosphere protects us. But some larger ones have crashed on the Earth. And that would be fascinating to watch. But as I say, we don't actually wish for that. There are other interesting phenomena that I hope people in the audience will be on the lookout for. Things, for example, like meteor showers. When dust from an old comet hits the Earth's atmosphere, you get this beautiful set of shooting stars. We have regular shooting star showers or meteor showers throughout the year. And if you're into watching the sky, those are often fun to look for. A good one in August is called the Perseids, after the constellation of Perseus. So Perseids, in sort of mid-August is a good time to look for them.
Besides your own book, what books or movies do you enjoy that center on astronomy?
Well, this is a very long question. I could spend the rest of the time on that.
You got 7 minutes.
I won't take any longer. There are many good introductory books in astronomy. There are books that lay out in layperson's terms what's going on in astronomy. And we know, for example, that Neil deGrasse Tyson right now has the best-selling nonfiction book in America, right, which is an introductory astronomy book. Any of those are written in everyday language are nice to read. As far as movies are concerned, there has been a real spate of wonderful science fiction movies with good science in them, right? Interstellar was a great movie that I hope you all saw about black holes. The recent movie called Arrival, which is all about how a linguistics expert becomes the Earth's hero How many times have you seen someone expert in linguistics become the hero of a movie? Just made us academic people warm all over to see that happening in a movie. But it's a nice science fiction story by Ted Chiang, called The Story of Your Life, one of my favorite science fiction stories, made into this great movie about how we might make contact with alien intelligences, and it's called Arrival. And as you heard during the introduction, a shameless plug, I myself, now that I'm about to retire and teach only part-time, I'm hoping to write more science fiction stories that have good science in them, because I really enjoy when the science fiction extrapolates the real science and shows us what might be possible in the future.
This seems like a good one to wind down on. What is your earliest memory of being excited about solar science?
Oh my goodness. Well, so this goes into the story of my life, which is, I will tell the short version. But we arrived here in America. I was an immigrant. My family came to America when I was 11, and I didn't speak a word of English. We escaped from Hungary, and we were very grateful to be welcomed to America. There was an extra quota that the Congress allowed of escaping Hungarians to come into the United States. And we arrived, and here I was not speaking a word of English, and my mom, who did speak some English, wondered what could we do to get the kid better at English. And she had this great idea, comic books. If you read comic books, the pictures kind of help you with the words. So my first English word was pow. No. But comic books really help you. And this was 1959, 1960. A lot of the comic book stories had a space element to them. Superman came from Krypton, right? There were all these, the Fantastic Four went into space. So there was a lot of astronomy in these comic books. And as I learned English from the comic books, I got fascinated by the space stories. And pretty soon, when you're a kid, you learn languages much more easily. I spoke English well enough to actually read books, and I would go to the library and ask for books on space. And the nice librarian would bring me some kid's book on space. And suddenly it dawned on me, I think when I was 12, my God, this is not just comic books. There are people who do this for a living. They get to investigate what's happening in space. And from that moment on, I was sold. My mom tells the story that the first planetarium she took me to in New York City, I didn't want to go home. I just wanted to spend all the time under the stars. And from then on, I was hooked. And so from about age 13, 14 on, I kind of said, what did I know about it? I wanted to be an astronomer. And by the time I was in high school, you could actually take courses in physics and astronomy. And I went to a nerdy high school, the Bronx High School of Science, and so I was able to study science there, and I was just hooked after that. And I've been lost in space ever since.
And what are your plans for the eclipse?
Well, we're going up to Oregon. My family and I are going up to Oregon. To an undisclosed location. Because the last time I gave a talk, I kind of said where it was, and I got emails saying, can we join you? Can we join you? And we have a really small group. But it's a wonderful story. My writing partner, Dennis Schatz, and I are going to be in a small town in Oregon where we have talked with the pastor of the church. And the pastor of the church is going to let us sleep in the pews and on the floor of the church the night before. So we are in the eclipse zone in exchange for telling his flock, his congregation, all about the eclipse on the morning of the eclipse. So a nice combination of science and religion.
Let's see, one more question. How do animals tend to react?
Yeah, so this is what I was saying before. We don't know a lot about animals except through anecdotes. Most of us, when we're seeing a short eclipse, and other eclipses, by the way, are longer than this. We've had eclipses as long as 6 or 7 minutes, so it's too bad this is a short one. But when we have the wonder, the grandeur of the eclipse, you really don't pay that much attention to animals unless there's something terrible happening. So mostly it's anecdotal evidence. Oh, I was on the farm and I saw the cows move and stuff like that. And so now, with this Life Response project, we're hoping to really get enough recorded stories, particularly because so many people in the US will be in country and rural environments during the eclipse, they'll be much more in touch with nature, and maybe these stories will be combinable into a really good database of what animals are doing. So if you're going up there and you have any animals, keep track of what they're doing and then put it in your phone for later referral to the California Academy. But mostly try to look up during the eclipse. It's really amazing.
Our thanks to Andrew Fracknoy, Chair of the Astronomy Department at Foothill College, former Executive Director of the Astronomical Society of the Pacific, and author of the children's book about eclipses, When the Sun Goes Dark. We also thank our audience. And we wish to remind everyone here that copies of Andrew's book are for sale, and he will be pleased to sign them in the fireside room following the program. I'm Mary Roach. And now, this meeting of the Commonwealth Club of California, the place where you're in the know, is adjourned.